The original Gravity Rush is without a doubt my favorite game for the PlayStation Vita. It's also the only Vita game I've played, and I also didn't play it until Gravity Rush Remastered came out on the PS4 in February 2016. The only time I've ever played a Vita was an in-store demo kiosk, and this one time I played Sly Cooper on it and liked it. With all of its worthwhile games being brought to the PS4 in an attempt to salvage any profits releasing the game only on the Vita in the West cost them, or would have cost them, I never saw much of a reason to get a Vita outside of the best version of Persona 4 and being able to play Virtue's Last Reward on a not shit screen, and now it doesn't even have the ability to brag about the latter. I know this is sort of off topic, but the situation with the Vita feels kind of needed when it comes to explaining my history with this series. Before I really start this review, I want to say the structure for it will be different than my previous reviews. I've divided it into different sections as there are certain things I want to separate from the rest of it, and rather than just having it off on its own while everything else is all together, I decided to separate everything into certain categories. Anyway, let's the review begin. When Sony decided to remaster Gravity Rush on the PS4, I jumped at the opportunity to play a game that had always interested me, but it never grabbed me enough to want to purchase the handheld, even in its early days when the future for the system seemed bright. I found the first half of the game fairly basic and not all that engaging outside of its protagonist Kat and the entertaining Sid. However, its second half grabbed my attention harder than any other game I had played up to that point that year. Everything surrounding the world pillar fascinated me, and the game's ending just screamed for a sequel harder than most other sequel bait endings. Normally I don't like this kind of ending, but the questions left unanswered, even if some of them had fairly obvious answers, left me wanting more of the world of Hexaville and the world pillar. This is where the Gravity Rush OVA steps in, and it's actually the first of the problems I have with Gravity Rush 2. There's nothing wrong with the OVA itself, it's actually quite fantastic. It can both introduce you to or reintroduce you to the characters well enough, and this animation is pretty great for a CG anime. It employs the same technique the third Berserk movie does by going back over the 3D animation and applying hand-drawn 2D animation to it, creating a look that emulates the games perfectly without having to have a huge budget. The hair does at times look like Season 1 of RWBY though, but it's not so frequent that it's distracting. Now, the problem with the OVA lies in the fact that it should have been in the main game. The events of the latter half of the OVA are so integral to the events of Gravity Rush 2 that it baffles me the game doesn't at least advertise its existence. It'll tell you multiple times that there are DLC costumes available even when you've already downloaded them, but the game never tells the player the OVA exists. The second the missing orphans case and the names Durga and Kali are brought up, the game acts like you should just know this information, and it barely explains its importance to the plot. In fact, I had forgotten a lot of the events of the OVA by that point, so when the orphan stuff came up, I thought it was referring to the missing children who fell down the world pillar from the first game. This is the first of a number of issues with how the game tells its story. While the story itself is good, the way it's told bounces back and forth between well done and confusing, which results in poor pacing, little to no explanations for things that should be very important, plot holes, and too many story contrivances for me to just accept. All this on top of a few ultimately minor yet still unanswered questions. Now, those are all the issues I have with this game's story. I'm gonna gush about it now. These characters are fantastically written and tons of fun. Kat, Sid, Raven, Lisa, Chaz, Cece, and others are interesting, unique, and just fun to follow around. The game is also split up in a way that the characters from the first game who didn't get much attention get so much more that it really fleshes them out as much as the rest of the main cast. Not only is the main plot well written, for the most part, but so are the side quests. Whether it be helping a main character, secondary character, or unnamed one-off characters, they're always plenty of fun and shockingly varied. One minute you'll be solving a police investigation while the next you'll be selling ice cream. First you'll be helping an old woman find her son's brand new store, and the next you'll be helping a dog hunt down his toy. Each side quest never feels like a chore, and even when it's with one-off characters who never show back up again, it's still fun. When the plot is actually being coherent and explains things well, it's incredibly interesting and entertaining. I actually got chills a couple of times near the end of the third chapter, and pretty much all the way through the final one. The problem with Gravity Rush 2's story isn't the story itself, but rather with how it's told. The first game had similar problems with story contrivances and plot holes, but it gets more of a pass as it was clearly always meant to be a prologue to the real story that is this sequel. At the time, it seemed as though those things were going to be explained and explored in the second game. And a good portion is, but not everything. Gravity Rush 2 doesn't get this excuse, as the opposite of the first game. It's very clearly meant to be the end of this world and these characters. It really feels like this game is meant to be the final one in this short-lived series, and it leaves both a sweet and sour taste in my mouth. While the story falters in a number of areas, the gameplay fares much better. The unique gameplay of the original is improved and added upon in this sequel, with practically everything expanded from its original incarnation. The addition of the Lunar and Jupiter styles helped vary the admittedly still repetitive but greatly improved gameplay. The Lunar style is a lot of fun, as just simply jumping and rocketing off everywhere is exhilarating and makes for a great challenge as you try to prevent yourself from falling. It also changes how Kat fights, replacing her one-hit chainable gravity kick with a weaker multi-hit attack that trades power for combat speed and greater dodging ability as you're constantly moving. Lunar style also trades the speed at which you fall for better controls as you do so. However, the Lunar style is the main culprit when it comes to the biggest issue with Gravity Rush 2's gameplay: the camera. The camera is downright ass at times, and given how fast you move while fighting in Lunar style, I often ended up with the camera caught on a wall or just having a seizure as it tries to keep up with Kat teleporting from enemy to enemy. The Jupiter style, while not having the same issues as the Lunar style, comes with its own problems. While the Lunar style trades power for combat speed and agility, the Jupiter style trades agility, falling control, and combat speed and combat options for raw power and faster falling speeds. This makes it the ideal style for traveling long distances, but in combat it feels incredibly situational and harder to use than it should be. On foot, you only have a single 3-hit combo that's incredibly slow and leaves you open in between each hit. While gravity shifting, you have an unchainable gravity kick that gets stronger the longer you charge it, but that too leaves you open for attacks the entire time. It also doesn't differ all that much from your normal style. While Lunar style really changes things up and adds a lot to Kat's arsenal, Jupiter removes more than it adds. It's because of these issues it ends up being the weakest of the three main styles. On a more positive note, each locale is absolutely beautiful and the game's presentation is fantastic. I never thought a mix of what looks like Studio Ghibli's iconic art style in American comic books would be able to work as well as it does. The music sounds wonderful, though there aren't too many standout tracks. Challenge missions return from the original and continue to be great tests of your skills in-game. Online events are also a new addition to the game. These events consist of things like treasure hunts, beating people's ghost times and challenges, as well as posting and rating pictures you can take with the well-implemented, but okay in-game camera. Online events add more things to do in the world. The fact that they appear at random actually really helps make the game more unpredictable in what you're going to be doing next. If there was one thing in the game I feel it'd be better off without, though, is the talisman system. You get talismans from completing certain side quests, online events, and mining, but the inventory system for them is so poor it makes it a chore to equip them, and even then their benefits aren't all that noticeable outside of gem grinding. Okay, so I didn't know where to include this, but I just couldn't end this review without talking about it. So here comes what's going to seem like an ultimate nitpick, but this just baffles me as to why it is. So in-game, there are two types of maps. There is the world map, and there's the regional map. And the world map, it exists to let you pick regional maps. By the way, I'm doing this semi off the cuff, so this is going to be a bit rougher than everything else. Anyway, so when I first needed to go to the old settlement in Jurgapero Lao, which is the green area, I looked at the world map to see where I needed to go. I had been to the houseboat fleet, the purple area, and the marketplace, the blue area, by that point, and the map showed exactly where they were in relation to each other. So I had assumed the old settlement would be east of the marketplace. As I headed out in that direction, I remembered I could place a waypoint on story missions, so I went to the regional map and activated it. When I exited out, it was telling me I had to go west of the marketplace. Sure enough, I go up and west, and there it is! If the old settlement is up and west of the marketplace, why the hell does the map say it's to the east of it? It's the same with Central Authority to an extent, as the map says it's northeast of the marketplace, when in reality, it's just directly above the old settlement. The fact that the world map is inconsistent in only these areas baffles me. The map of Hexaville is 100% accurate in both the regional map and the world map. Why isn't Jirga Paralau accurate? Also, why do the depictions of the old settlement, the marketplace, and Central Authority look almost nothing like they actually do on the regional map? Was the world map designer not informed of what these areas look like, and was instead just given a vague description of them? This is such a minor thing, but I don't understand how they could mess this up when it is so minor. It's so simple, why is it like this? Before I end this review, I want to talk about the free DLC starring Cat's best friend Raven. It takes place in between the original game and the OVA, and explains what happened with the children asleep in the Ark from the first game. While you could argue going back over a plot thread that was very important in the first game should have been covered in the base game, I don't have too much of a problem with it being covered in free DLC. While it's not as long as the base game and it's incredibly linear, I'd actually say, as a whole, it's the best title in the whole series, or at least the most consistent in quality. Its storytelling is fantastic as it develops Raven even further than the base game does, and it makes her almost as likable as a protagonist as Cat. Raven also controls differently from Cat. Rather than having a gravity kick and Styles, she does a spinning drill attack where she will continuously spin like a drill into enemies. While it doesn't leave her as open, it's much harder to control than Cat's attacks. She also has the ability to create blue flame balls that she can throw alongside items you can pick up around the environment. She also feels lighter and faster than Cat, yet feels much more satisfying and responsive than the Lunar style. And to top it all off, the ending is actually pretty sad, even if it leaves open one big but ultimately nothing plot hole. If you get Gravity Rush 2, there is literally no reason to not download this alongside it. It's free and it's the most consistent in quality title in the entire series. If I had to rate the games, I'd give both the original and Gravity Rush 2 solid 8 out of 10s, though I do think the sequel is the better game in every respect. Its problems just weigh it down more than the originals did. The DLC, Raven's Choice, however, I'd have to give it a solid 9 out of 10, it being the most consistent in quality while also proving Raven can be a good protagonist just like Cat raises it above the rest in my opinion. Gravity Rush 2 is the end to a saga that didn't blow my mind. It didn't amaze me like the Zero Escape series did, but it also isn't disappointing. To me, Gravity Rush 2 and the series as a whole sits in a comfortable place in my mind. It's not an obscure series I want to get others into, but it's one that I'll have fond memories of. It won't be the first thing to come to my mind when I think of underrated series, but it'll still be a series I wish got more attention than it did.